So thank you so much for having me this morning. I am from the Detroit area over in the US. So I am starting my day off strong with all of you fabulous people, and I couldn't have it any other way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about blogging and kind of a small crash course. There is a ton to blogging, so please don't think that this is the end all be all of everything, but I hope to give you a good overview of why you should consider doing it for your business and how to implement some good strategies to go along with it. So a little bit about me and how in the world I ended up doing this. My background is actually not in blogging or content creation or anything with the internet. I spent about 15 years in fundraising and event management communications. And during the pandemic, like so many people, took some time to kind of reevaluate their career. I really wanted to align my career with my ethics. And so I started looking for a job in the vegan space or with an environmental or ethical company, and I couldn't find a job. So what does any college educated professional do during a global pandemic when everybody is at home? They start a vegan travel blog. And full disclosure, prior to the pandemic, I did travel quite a bit, and people were really enamored with what in the world did I eat? And I'd get some really crazy questions from it. So I figured, okay, maybe this is a really great way to be forced to learn a ton of new skills and then also be able to network with like-minded people. And so I figured this would be a good way to just pivot my career. I didn't think of it as a long-term thing. I had no plan that it was going to turn into anything on its own, that it was merely going to kind of force me in a new direction. Well, the blog began to grow, and then it opened me up to different projects and freelance opportunities and consulting. And then I started to think, okay, well, maybe travel is where I'm supposed to be. Maybe this is kind of where I can have my form of activism and pushing this industry forward into getting them to take on or to add vegan options, to be more sustainable. So I further went down the path a little over a year ago when I left my full-time job. And so I've been working on the blog since then. And I also launched travel planning services as a travel advisor officially last week. And so my focus is on vegan and sustainable itineraries. So things continue to grow with this. So moving into blogging and how this can help your business. You can also use a blog obviously on its own, but I'm going to go through why this could be really beneficial for your business specifically or service. So I did a little digging into some statistics of why blogging is impactful specifically for businesses. And I'm not going to read through all of these, you guys can see them. And, very high level, it is, all services, all industries kind of taken into consideration. It can have a really big impact on your marketing strategy. And I think it's one of those things that often gets left off of, the channel list of things that we consider. We put a lot of effort into social media, or we put a lot of effort into advertising. But a blog can be a very much a lower cost version of all of those things put together. And it can lead to some really great things, as far as traffic and sales coming into your business. So I think these are really great to see as a whole of how this can be beneficial. But I'm sure many of you are probably thinking, what about me specifically? And how can this help me? So getting into kind of the deeper dive of, for your business specifically and how it can be beneficial, I think one of the biggest things is that it helps to differentiate yourself and helps to set you up as an expert in your field. If you have a website and you're now driving more traffic to it and you're talking about a range of topics that are related to your business, and you're driving new eyeballs to it, now people are seeing you as an expert on whatever this thing is, whether it's adaptogenic mushrooms or content marketing strategies. They come, one after another, and they see, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. If you're able to solve their problem. If you're able to help them through an issue that they're working through, or you provide them with a service or a product that solves whatever they're working through, is a really great strategy that you're not necessarily going to get as easily through social media. A really fantastic thing about a blog is that if you please Google in the right ways, this content can stay out there forever. It's not a 8-hour, time lapse or an 8-hour post that then disappears into oblivion, maybe it happens on Instagram. It can stay out there for years and years until either you decide to take it down or you don't update it any longer and Google doesn't find it relevant. So when you're thinking about really long-term strategies, having a blog and having this kind of content out there can really be helpful to bringing in new traffic, and then also helping your current clients and giving them even more reason to love you. And so with that increased organic traffic, this can lead to increased sales, whether it's your service, whether it's a product. I think any of us would love to have a little bit of a larger bottom line. So having these people come in is, great. The new people, which then can help grow your email list. And we all know email lists are gold. And you want to have as many people as you possibly can that are dedicated and want to hear from you. So if you're able to grow that in an easier way, why not? We talked a little bit about attracting the new customers and establishing yourself already as an expert. And then this can also help reinforce yourself with your current audience. If we always need to find ways that we can be of greater service to the people that are following us, because if we don't, they're going to find somebody else, or we're just going to fall off, their regular trajectory of things that they want to seek out for information. And so we never want to give them a reason to leave. And when we're providing new content and information to them and helping them through their daily lives, why do they want to leave? And so I think, thinking about all these things, many of you are probably like, okay, great. I need to start thinking about this strategy. This could be a silver bullet, but there is a really big but to all of this that I want to make clear. It is absolutely a marathon. It is not a sprint in any way, shape, or form. When you are building a blog or building any kind of a content marketing strategy, it is not overnight. And this is honestly one of the biggest reasons why people quit. They think, okay, I'm going to develop these great things. I've got all these fantastic ideas. People are going to want to hear from me. And they start, and then it's crickets. And honestly, that is how it goes in the beginning. Google has to assess, are you legitimate? Are you going to stick around? And are what you're producing, is it worthwhile for us to consider? And that is not an overnight adventure, unfortunately. And so it can take, upwards of 6 months sometimes for Google to index posts and to really start to evaluate what you're talking about. It does get a little bit easier, and sometimes some things come quicker. But overall, it is a longer term process, but it comes with longer term gains, which is really important to keep in mind. Again, having an ad campaign where you set a very specific duration to it, that's not the case with blogging. I've written things over 2 years ago that are doing really well still today, and you just keep it updated. And as long as I continue to do that, it will stay out there for the next decade. But unless I have a really huge ad budget, that's not going to happen with an ad. And the other thing with it too, in the first couple of years, or in your first year of having a blog, Google sometimes puts you in what people consider is the sandbox, where they're evaluating you, they're evaluating what you're putting out there. So some things might not have much movement. And so it can take a little bit of time for you to kind of move out of that. And so those are all things that you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're producing this, because it does take a lot of time. Blogging is one of those things where when I first started, I did not have any idea what I was getting myself into. And once I realized how much work it was going to take, it was like, holy smokes, I cannot believe that some people do this as full-time jobs. Because it is not a small feat by any stretch of the imagination. So you just have to know, as you're putting in this effort, that it can really reward and pay dividends, but it is not going to be an overnight thing. So now that you kind of have a bit of a backstory of how it can be beneficial specifically to you and as an industry as a whole, and we've, held the horses in the barn a little bit, so to speak, that's not going to be off to the races right away. How do we implement some really good strategies to please Google? Because after all, we need to make sure that we're always writing for our audience, but we have to do it in a way that makes Google happy. And so first and foremost, you've got to research your audience. You have to know who in the world you're talking to. And so this can be done through conducting audience surveys, do it through your email list. You can set up a really easy Google Doc, Google Doc, and create a survey within that for free to do to find some information about your audience. You can look at buying patterns and what are people really gravitating towards. Use your customer feedback if they leave comments on things to overall find out what matters to them. You can ask questions on social media of what matters to people, and then look at your industry as a whole and what are the trends and could your audience be interested in this. Overall, you need to find ways to fill a need and help your audience, so again they want to keep coming back to you over and over again. And second, you need to know your competition. What is your competition talking about? What aren't they talking about? Are they blogging? If they're blogging, do they have holes in their content that you can do better? And then you also have to kind of evaluate things on the periphery as well, and places that are talking about these topics that you think are relevant to what you do. And is there a way that you could do that better as well? And then once you kind of have really great ideas of what you want to talk about, you have like topics and themes and everything, you need to do a little bit of investigation into kind of the search volume behind it. And there are a few different platforms, I've listed them here, that can help you do a little bit of digging into kind of the traffic involved with these search terms. SEMrush, KeySearch, and Ubersuggest all have free options to them. Ahrefs is really fantastic, but it is expensive. One thing that you can do is you can do a lot of research ahead of time and then do a free month with Ahrefs and then cancel it. I've done that multiple times. You can do it with multiple emails, which is a little bit sneaky. Whatever to get the job done works, but the rest of them also work as well. I will preface this as well. If you do talk to an SEO expert, some of them will suggest that you only go after key terms that have really big search volume. I think sometimes when we're in really niche communities, that is kind of the wrong way to go about it, because even if only 70 people are searching for something every month, these could be 70 very dedicated people that you could be helping and could be perfect for your audience. And I think it is always better to have that quality of an audience member and someone who's going to buy your products or use your service, as opposed to having just the quantity of the people coming through your doors and then leaving and not signing up for your newsletter, not utilizing your services. And then lastly, you've got to be thorough. So in an incognito browser, you'll want to research what is being talked about these topics that you plan to write about, and find ways to improve upon what already exists out there. And I mentioned that incognito browser, and it's not because you're being stealthy or anything, but Google looks at everything that we search for. And so they develop your search pattern, or they develop search based on your specific search patterns. So if I go and search for vegan pizza, I just do vegan pizza, it's probably going to give me vegan pizza in the Detroit area, because it knows that's where I am. It knows that I specifically look for vegan restaurants fairly often and that I'm looking for places. So it is kind of developing the search habit based on your preferences and what you're really interested in. So an incognito browser takes that away. and gives you a better look at what the search overall is and what a regular person who isn't you might see. And so it can give you a better breadth of content. And so now that you've developed kind of a bit of a strategy, you have some ideas in mind, you're going to write something that's super stellar and please the Google gods, how are we going to increase traffic to it? So there are a few different ways. First and foremost, you need to understand search intent or searcher intent behind what you are writing. And so this means if, let's say, you have a product that uses reishi mushrooms in it. And so you have an idea that you're going to write a post about reishi mushrooms, but you don't do any research into what specifically with reishi mushrooms, and you do something very broad. Because you see like the search volume with it is really high, there could be really good possibility with it. Then you write this and goes out into the world, and then it falls completely flat. And this could be because you didn't understand the search intent behind it. And that maybe people, when they're searching for reishi mushrooms, they're searching for recipes, or they're searching for the health benefits associated with it, or they're searching for products that contain reishi mushrooms. So you do need to get into kind of a deeper part of that and not be quite so broad. It happens to the best of us where we don't consider that, and you write something and you're like, this is going to be amazing. And then it just falls flat, and it is a bummer, let me tell you. And secondly, you need to make sure that you're doing internal and external backlinking. Internal backlinking is when you're writing a post and you see the highlighted hyperlinked text within the post, and it either leads you to something outside of your website or inside your website. Both are really important. Internal backlinking, internal linking shows Google how things are associated within your website. So if you're talking about something, and say, I'll use the reishi mushrooms again. So you sell a product that uses reishi mushrooms, and so then you write a post about the benefits of it. You'd want to make sure that you link back to your product that contains these and anything else that is relevant within your website. So then Google kind of starts mapping out, how are these things interconnected? Why does this matter? And it is able to paint a picture or put a puzzle together for you. And then external backlinking is showing Google that, that these other sites see you as an expert on these topics. External backlinking can be a little bit more difficult for a service business or a business in general, because it does take time sometimes to develop external backlinks. I did write on here a couple different places that you can go to kind of help speed up the process. Haro and Quoted are both journalist-driven platforms where journalists or websites will go when they're seeking an expert on a certain topic. Haro, I like a little bit more than the other one. Haro sends out requests 3 times a day, and they break them down by different industries, which is really helpful. You can sign up for all of the industries you want or just the specific ones. So I receive general updates and I receive travel specific ones. And so when you get them in your inbox, it will say, looking for an expert on health and weight loss tips, or looking for an expert on using air tags and lost luggage. I mean, it's a really vast range of things that you will see. And sometimes they're really interesting to kind of see what people are looking at, but also it can be a bit of a rabbit hole. So if you find one that you feel like you can answer, then you respond to the journalist, you give them a bit of your background, you share, including the link to your website, and tell them, why are you a valid person for this? And then you go into answering their question. If they choose you, then they'll include you in the story, and more often than not, then they'll link back to your website, which is really great because a lot of these publications are fairly large. And so they have more authority than, you will just starting out. And so that helps to confirm, with Google, your legitimacy. Another good option, especially for vegan businesses, is there are a varied amount of different business directories out there that are vegan specific. So if you do a quick Google search of vegan business directories, a handful will come up. where you can submit your business details and it will come with a link back. So those are kind of easy things that you could just automatically go and do and put yourself forward for to get that backlink credibility. And then over time, as you grow content and you become more of an authority on something, or people find you really what you have to say worthwhile, backlinks will naturally come, but it just takes a little bit of extra time. And the other thing with that too, if you do see someone talking about a topic that you feel like you're a relevant expert on, you could always shoot them a note and say, hey, I have this post on X, which I think could be really helpful to what you're writing here. I thought I would share this. And then sometimes too, in these business groups as well, they can be really great sources of, maybe cross-pollination and helping each other out with sharing different things, where one thing could be shared on another platform. So that's always something to keep in mind, especially when you're developing things that you want to get out into the world. Then you have to keep content updated. It is not something that you write once, you send it out into the world, and then it just automatically does its thing. You have to keep it updated regularly. If you see something that happens within maybe your industry or with a service that is relevant, go and try and update the post as soon as you can, just so that it keeps it relevant and helpful. But I'd say at least once a year, make sure you make a plan to go through and do a really large update to everything. Don't let things just, kind of fall apart over time. Otherwise, you'll slowly just creep out of Google's lens and they'll not see you as legitimate any longer. And when you do a really large update, it's really good to go through, check the links, make sure links are still working, make sure what you said a year ago still fits. If you do a pretty hefty update and change quite a bit, then you can go ahead and repost that. And so it means changing it to today's date, which refreshes it even further. And sometimes that can give you a bit of a boost as well with it. And then lastly, you need to make sure that if you have any site issues, you get them fixed. And this includes site speed, being user-friendly. If your site isn't easy to use, if it's not easy to find things, if it doesn't flow well, this is a red flag to Google. And also with site speed as well. Google really uses that as a gauge, because they know that if it takes your site, 30 seconds to load, it's not going to wait around for it, nor is a person, because there's just way too much to look at on the internet nowadays that there's just like going to disqualify you. And a really great way to check your site speed is if you Google site speed. Google has a website that you can stick your link in, and it will automatically check it. And it will give you a number that will show up in either red, orangish yellow, or green. And I think the general rule of thumb is if you say at least are around 60 or above, you're okay. If you're in a more painful yellow or red stage, then you really need to get that checked out. And the most easiest way with this is, unless you're really into tech and messing around with websites, is to hire somebody to take a look at it for you and fix those things for you. Doing a yearly web maintenance tune-up is a really great idea as well, because some things might change over time. Certain things might not load well. So it's really good to always have someone kind of come in and take a look under the hood and help tune those things up for you. And that can always lead to a little bit of a boost as well. And I know it's really simple things that you just wouldn't really think about. But if you ever go to a website the next time and you see that it's loading really poorly, then that is just like it's a key to you that this one would not do well in any kind of SEO land. And it's just a really easy thing to fix. So with that, I've kind of gone through a lot, I know, and this really just kind of scratches the surface into blogging, much more than I feel like you could really get through in just a 30-minute conversation. So I want to open it up to questions, and my contact information is here as well. So if you think of things after this presentation, feel free to reach out to me. If I can help you in some way, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Fabulous. That's great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I think we have some questions. So let's go to the first one. So June, did you want to share that question, or did you want me to read it out?
Sure. So thank you so much, by the way, Rebecca. You're so sharp. I love how precise that design as well. Really pretty. Thank you. Really valuable for me today. The question that I have, right? So I'm aware, let's say, of 75% of what you shared just by being an entrepreneur and figuring that stuff out. But there are a couple of things. And one thing that crossed my mind is, like, I run a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, the podcast is basically what I'm using as a blog on my website. So every episode has a separate page. And I just was wondering what your thoughts are on that. Is there like a difference in that, or can they be viewed as a same or a similar way to grow the business and to provide value and to reach more people, etc.?
Yeah, the podcast also is a really great way. It shows up a little bit different in search than actual long form content does. So I would say utilize kind of the same tools with, building out it would be show notes with that. And so making sure that you're using consistent keywords associated with what you're talking about in your show notes. Are you able to do headlines and show notes? Okay, making sure.
Well,
okay.
Depends on the platform, but.
Oh, okay. If you're able, make sure that you utilize headlines to reinforce your topic as well, and then including the links into the show notes too. I think to kind of further strengthen that, you could then build a blog page off of your website and then link them back together, which would help kind of further marry the topic as well. But I think instituting some of those basic things can help, especially I think it makes the biggest difference, not in the eyes of Google, but if I'm searching on Spotify or Apple, if you're being consistent with how you're doing those show notes and, putting that content in there, and I search for, I don't know, vegan, whatever, it makes it easier for it to come up as opposed to someone who isn't doing those things and is just posting the show, maybe doing a title and maybe doing one link. Then it's not as seen as put together, I guess, so to speak, as what you're doing.
Thanks. I have them on my website, so that's a great reaffirmation. I have it on my website, and I would say I treat it as a blog. So I have the show notes also as like a description on the website with an embedded link to the YouTube video, plus links to Spotify and other platforms. So thank you. You're just reaffirming that I'm doing it good.
Yeah, that's great. And then if you can then get on some of those journalist platforms and then pick up in the media, so then you can get external linking, that would make it even better.
I took note of that. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Matali. Oh, sorry, Carly, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, with all the AI that's happening at the moment, are you starting to integrate that with your blogging as well? And have you got any recommendations?
Yeah, so AI is actually a huge topic right now. I don't use any AI. You will get a varied answer on this depending on who you talk to. So from God, I can't even remember, from the head of Google, he's been very clear that they will not give a demerit, but they don't view AI content in the way of human created content. And so they have been very clear that they do not want people who are creating content to be using AI to create that. So I have avoided it. I don't use it. It's also, I find really difficult to get AI to be me. And if you read any of my stuff, it is very much coming from me. And so, and as any kind of business or service, when you want people to buy into, they're buying a part of you, really. That's really a hard thing to replicate in AI. If you're writing about, I don't know, airplanes and like the technical aspects of airplanes, maybe that's a good way to utilize AI because it's quite dry. But when you're, doing it, for a service related business, or a product, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So, I don't use any of it. I know other people who do use some of it to maybe draft content and create like an outline, so to speak, before they start writing it. That could be a way to go about it, and you could see what the AI machine comes up with and then make it your own. If you do that, I would just really encourage you to make sure that you make it your own, and you don't keep it very much a ton of what the AI has spit out, just so that you do really personalize it. And then going back to Google gives us a lot of guardrails as to what they want, and then sometimes they come out very strongly and say, do not do this, do not do that. And then sometimes they, weaken on certain things, but they have been very consistent with saying that they're not huge fans of AI content for any kind of a long form content, especially with blogs and things like that. So the long and the short of it is, I don't use it. If you're creating stuff, I'd say for like other marketing pieces or social media, I think that could come in really handy, but I would just be careful with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be interested to know how they could actually tell, because I think if something AI created it, you wouldn't want to use it completely that way anyway. For me, how I'd want to use it is that my copywriting isn't very good. So it's good to have something else like I look over that. But okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you. Mitali?
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for that. That was really, really helpful. I'll need to get in touch with you later anyway, on something else. But I've kind of let my blog go a little bit for a year. I do need to get back into it. But I always had the comments switched off. I've been recently told you should have comments because that helps with SEO. So I think the question for me is to comment or not to comment. Do I leave it on or do I switch it off?
You can switch it off. It doesn't affect it. And then this day and age too, with social media, there are plenty of ways for people to give you a comment if they want to comment. So it does not hurt you, and it doesn't help you. So it's one of those things that if you want to keep it as an outlet for people to share things, you can. If you don't want to mess with it and moderate it, you can take it off as well. The other big thing with it is that you need to make sure that you have a plugin that manages spam, because I think a lot of times a lot of the comments can be junk, and that can take up a lot of time to just have to like scan through and be like, what's legitimate and what's not. And so one of those plugins can be really helpful for managing through that. But from an SEO standpoint, no, doesn't matter.
Great, that's good to know. And that was the major issue I had. I think 80% of the comments that I was getting on my blog was just spam. I was getting the odd comment, but it just felt like great, another place online that I need to check for comments on top of all the other places online. So it's good to know that it doesn't really affect SEO.
Right. Yeah. No, totally fine.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Carly, is that a legacy hand or is that a new hand?
It's a new one. You were talking about how regularly as well. What would be your recommendation if someone can like do something every day? What would be your recommendation of how often to do an article or blog?
So if you're looking to grow, the general rule of thumb is to at least update or do something new weekly. But I will say, if you can't commit to that, don't try and put yourself on that trajectory. Just be consistent with it. The best thing, especially with SEO, is consistency. So if you go through a period and you're like, I'm going to do 10 a week, And Google's like, holy smokes, what's this person doing? Like, wow, okay. And then you just go dark for, let's say, 6 months. So then that sends a signal to Google that maybe you're not going to stick around, or maybe you started out really hot, and they're just like, they'll keep you further kind of in the sandbox. So just be consistent with it. If it's, every other week, that's fine. Make sure you pick a schedule that you can stick to.
Because I've got a website and it's a shop as well, and it has the events. So there's new events going on consistently, like at least like once a month, and then quarterly as well. So can it tell then when it's a blog and when you're posting an event as such?
It can tell when you've updated things, yeah, because Google crawls your website regularly. So it can see when things have been changed.
Just things that have been changed, not necessarily that it's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
It shows.
Right. It knows, like, and it could see dates and things like that. So if you have stuff from 1999 on there, then that's a different issue for it. But if it sees that you're going in there regularly and updating things, then, that is really helpful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one quick one from Shabari, because we're almost on time.
Oh yeah, just a quick one from me. I put it in the chat as well. Thank you for that, Rebecca. That was brilliant. Thank you. I wanted to ask, actually, you mentioned about getting on journalist platforms. What would be the best way to do that?
If you just Google HARO or Quoted, they'll come right up. And so then you can easily sign up for free. Both are free platforms. Another one is Source Bottle. In all honesty, I get all three, but I really only utilize HARO the most. And then sometimes too, you'll see that journalists use multiple. HARO just seems to be the easiest. It comes multiple times a day. There isn't, like, I think with Quoted, if you don't pay for the account, you cannot respond to journalists within the first, I think, hour or something extraordinarily silly and frustrating. And I don't pay for any of them. So HARO just makes it the easiest. And the sign up for it is super simple. And then also too, if you're ever looking for a source on something, you could always flip and request for that as well too. I've done that for certain things.
Brilliant, thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that fabulous information.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for the questions as well. And yeah, so we're all gonna head off and blog away now.